2. We are going to look at natural selection. And if you look at the picture, you see a poor little giraffe that cannot reach the branches to have something to eat. So, the one with the long neck could reach. This one with the short neck cannot reach. And in simple terms, we say that this is how what they inherited from the ancestors. The one inherited a gene for a longer neck. The other one did not. And now, the short neck one get less and less food, especially during drier times, where all the animals eat at the same height. And only those that can reach the top branches have something to eat. So we say, variation provide better chances to survival for certain genetic types, for certain genotypes, those with the gene for long necks. So that means with that gene of having a longer neck inherited from your ancestors, you have a better chance to survive. If you can eat, you become mature. Eventually you are sexually mature and you can breed. If you cannot eat, you cannot breed, you do not have offspring. But that short necks is also not transferred to any other giraffes. But those with the longer necks, they meet pairing mates, they reproduce, and which gene will be moving on, will be inherited in that species? The gene for the longer neck. So, they will inherit the favorable characteristic and they will be better adapted. And that means they were selected by the features of the environment, by nature. And they will survive and they will reproduce. And that is where they get the term for natural selection. Selected by the nature, by the conditions in the environment. But actually, it was due to the fact that they inherit the specific gene that bring them to have a specific phenotype to reach the higher branches with the leaves that can still be eaten and provide nutrition. Natural selection can therefore lead to evolution. How? Because if this change is over million of years, and it leads to that those two species that once came from the same ancestor cannot breed anymore, we have a new species. So evolution is when we have a change in the genetic material over many years, it is inherited from a common ancestor, and the responses to the environment cause change. That now leads to the formation of a new species, that is evolution. And to tell you a little story to understand that, there was a group of lovely butterflies. They all lived in a beautiful garden, and they were adapted to eat this flowers that was the blossoms of peach trees. But one day there was a strong wind and it blew a few of these lovely butterflies out, and they end up in a new garden. And in this new garden, there was no pink peach flowers. And some of them had the ability to eat of them. So, of this group that end up in a new garden, only those that was adapted, who had the right mouth parts, that could have get some nectar from this completely new type of flower. Only they could mate, had the energy to reproduce, and eventually those that cannot mate died. But with them also the allow with the mouth parts that cannot eat. So all the offspring can survive. And after a while, there was a few of this they can reproduce. But over many of the years, the change also was in other characteristics, and there was now a new species. The color changed, and this could not, after millions of years, could not reproduce with those in the peach garden anymore. And then we have a new species. So, very important. When we have overpopulation, it tells us that there are enough resources for the species to survive. But the moment when there's a change in the environment, the type of food, the availability of water, the quality of the air, when anything change in the environment, all those that can survive needs to be different from the group. There need to be variation. And those that now can survive the changed conditions mean they are better adapted. And they use the term, the fittest will survive. The fittest will survive. Fit means to be best adapted to stay alive. You can breed when you are adapted. You have the energy. You are fit. And now you can pass on the allows to your offspring. And they will not have the allows that cannot survive. They will only have the allows that they inherit from their parents. Slowly the genotype will change and it will be visible in the phenotype. All of the butterflies will have better equipped mouth parts for the white flowers in the white garden. Eventually the phenotype change, and over a long period of time there's evolutionary changes and a new species. And that brings us to something that happens in humans. In humans, we also had a mutation. Now I want to tell you, a mutation is many times it is harmful. We think hemophilia, we think cystic fibrosis. All that is a harmful mutation. But some mutations, like the sickle cell anemia, had a slight advantage. Let me tell you about sickle cell anemia. Now we know a normal blood cell. Now, there you see a normal blood cell is disc-shaped and it is biconcave because it increase the surface area to transport oxygen on the hemoglobin. Because of a mutation, the shape, the protein that caused the shape of the blood cell, the red blood cell, to look like that, change and it looks like this. A blood cell, red blood cell, is also called an erythrocyte. And what now happens is A normal blood cell can move easily and smoothly, even through the tiniest of capillaries. And there's much more space in it to transport oxygen on the hemoglobin. The abnormal sickle cell has less space to transport oxygen, abnormal hemoglobin, and it gets stuck in the hooks and it forms a clot there. So it stops the normal flow and transport of oxygen. So when you have cells like that, you do not have enough or even any oxygen at some parts of your body. And they do not grow old when they have sickle cell anemia. Because you need the oxygen. For what? You need the oxygen during the process of aerobic respiration, grade 12s. Oxygen, aerobic respiration to release enough energy in order to do all your functions. Now, so let's look at a video that explains this to us.
Sickle cell anemia is a genetic disease that affects hemoglobin, the oxygen transport molecule in the blood. The disease gets its name from the shape of the red blood cells under low oxygen conditions. Some red blood cells become sickle-shaped, and these elongated cells get stuck in small blood vessels so that parts of the body don't get the oxygen they need. Sickle cell anemia is caused by a single letter change in the DNA. This in turn alters one of the amino acids in the hemoglobin protein. Valine sits in a position where glutamic acid should be. The valine makes the hemoglobin molecules stick together when oxygen tension is low, forming long fibers that distort the shape of the red blood cells, and this brings on an attack.
So, grade 12, sickle cell anemia is a recessive allele to be caused due to this strange mutation. Do you think it's a gene mutation or a chromosome mutation? Only one amino acid is changed. Yes, it is a gene mutation. So, when we have two unaffected carrier parents, we can have a child that is affected. Two heterozygote parents, heterozygote father, heterozygote mother. The small r is for the sickle cell anemia. Now, and if we have then a parent that can give one to that child and the other to that child, we have a sickle cell anemia case in the child. But they also say that sickle cell anemia is a codominant trait. Aha. So the moment when we have codominance, we know that we can have a normal child, we can have a sickle cell disease child, but we can have carriers. Yes, and my question would have been, okay, if the two parents are carriers and they don't, then they have the disease if it's codominant. Interestingly, they do not show the symptoms. So if you have sickle cell anemia, you cannot carry oxygen. If you have normal blood, of course you are healthy. But if you have both alleles, you are a carrier, you will not show the signs of the disease. Why? It's codominant. you have the cells, but you do not show the signs of the disease. And interesting that heterozygotes that produce both types of the blood cell has a very interesting fact. They do not suffer from malaria. They do not suffer from malaria. Some way or the other, the malaria parasite cannot breed inside their red blood cells the same way. So where do we find most sickle cell carriers? In the malaria areas. Because they survive the malaria and they transfer the sickle cell to their offspring. Unfortunately, there is a chance to have an offspring that has sickle cell anemia, but only if both parents. If both parents has the sickle cell trait, they have the advantage. They will survive the big M. The big M is for malaria. No, they will survive it. They will transfer this gene to their offspring. In fact, 3 out of every 4 possibility for their offspring. Now, in malaria area, this child does not have a good chance to survive if he is not taking care of the mosquitoes, the malaria mosquitoes. So in malaria area, this one have a risk. This one will not survive because the sickle cell will bring not enough oxygen and this child will not survive. But these two have a better chance to survive. And now I want you to look at the proper way how to write down sickle cell anemia. If you can remember when we had codominant alleles, we use a C. C, let's think of a red flower and a white flower that brings a pink flower. We use a C, W, C, R. Both capital because codominant means equally dominant. Now here we use the HB. We use the HB, I'm writing it bigger so that you can see it, for our trait. And we can have normal, or they use an A, normal, or we can have sickle cell. If you are a carrier, you have both. You will survive malaria. You are malaria resistant if you have this combination. If you have normal, and in this case they use an A, please read which letter they ask. This is a normal, and the normal one has no malaria resistance. Unfortunately, if you have sickle cell red blood cells and you are homozygous sickle cell, you have severe anemia. Anemia was when you do not have, when you have a lack or a deficiency of iron. That was anemia. No. But sickle cell anemia is where you are tired, do not have enough oxygen, do not have enough energy, not due to a deficiency of iron, but to a problem with the shape of the red blood cell. That is a mutation and definitely a gene mutation. Okay, isn't that very, very interesting? This is a mutation that is harmful if you are homozygous. SS. If you are homozygous, you suffer from anemia, you cannot get old. If you are heterozygous, you can have a resistance against malaria. So interesting. Now, so the correlation, and here is where you see the falciparum malaria. Now, where the malaria parasite, you remember it's a plasmodium, Plasmodium falciparum, Plasmodium vivax, but Plasmodium are found over these areas of the world. Now, due to the fact that who will survive conditions with the malaria parasite? Those that are sickle cell heterozygous. And if they draw a map over Africa where there are the sickle cell allele occurring most, is where the malaria parasite is occurring most. And we can say that is natural selection, because the environmental conditions cause the transfer of the sickle cell to have an advantage. They will stay alive if they are carriers. You agree? You will not stay alive if you are homozygous sickle cell, but you also have a chance to die if you are homozygous normal hemoglobin. In the areas where malaria parasite is getting into the body, burst the red blood cells, in any case cause huge number of deaths. Now, and that is why we link sickle cell anemia with the natural selection. Okay, that is then our story for mutations and sickle cell anemia.
ShopRite's birthday for more low prices. Like 2 liters Nam milk Omaere, only $34.99. And 2 liters Crystal Gold Sunflower Oil, just $44.99. Go Walolo with our more low price birthday.
Attention fans! Finding your favorite sporting entertainment has never been easier with dedicated channels. Get 24-hour sports news and highlights on SuperSport Blitz.
Hamilton is that much closer.
SuperSport Football gets you closer to all your local football action and selected international tournaments. Brace yourself for the best of La Liga on SuperSport La Liga. Enjoy the stars from Serie A, English Football Championship, and other football, athletics, marathons, and more on SuperSport Select 1. Top it off with additional African sports entertainment on SuperSport Select 2. Catch a variety of American sports entertainment and more on ESPN 1.
Finding your sport with SuperSport Channel Makeover is now made easy. Stay connected or get GoTV. GoTV. Live it, love it.
on the worksheet that we did on natural selection. I wonder if you also feel it, that we are now doing more interesting perhaps, but also more difficult work. With difficult, I mean there's a lot of information that I have studied that I now need to incorporate in my answers. When you see an answer, grade 12, higher level, means go into what you know. So it is important to work back and refer in your answers to what you know about this topic. The first question, define the term gene. Yes, gene was long ago, 2 chapters or what ago. But still, we are working with genes because the genotype need to change during natural selection. And when the genotype change, the phenotype will also change. And then there is some changes in the organism which can help the organism to adapt. Please remember, it's if one organism adapts, we cannot say it is evolution, or evolution is on its way, or we cannot say that the whole population will survive. So just a little hint here, which I want to talk about, and that is, when we talk about natural selection, it is about the population. Yes, it starts with a few individuals, but in order to have this carried onwards, it needs to change the population. That is one important thing. And the second word that I want to use here is the word competition. The word competition is one that competition is eventually going to determine if a population can survive in an environment. So competition refers to, can you outcompete either with other organisms living with you in the same area, compete for water, safe place to stay, to hide, and with pairing mate. And those that can find a pairing mate and transfer the healthy gene, in the case of sickle cell anemia, onto their offspring, will eventually cause the natural selection of specific alleles for the population to survive. I hope you understand that. First question, define the term gene. A length of DNA or a part of a chromosome, or a length of DNA on the chromosome which carries the genetic code for particular characteristics of an organism. A gene mutation occurs when part of the DNA on a single chromosome is changed. State 2 factors. We call the factors mutagens that may increase the rate of mutation. A factor that may increase the rate of gene mutation is a mutagen. We have the UV rays from the sun. We have X-rays or gamma rays. Also chemicals like tar in cigarettes would have been the correct answer. Sickle cell anemia is caused by a gene mutation. Gene, and just a bit of revision here, a gene is a specific sequence of nitrogenous bases on the DNA, you remember? And if there is a problem with the copying of this nitrogenous bases, and this sequence now change, what will change? The protein will change, and that is exactly what's happening here. The red blood cells from a healthy person and one from sickle cell anemia. So, we know proteins cause structure, and here we can see the structure change because the hemoglobin, and is hemoglobin a protein? Yes, it is one of those globular proteins. No? Globular proteins. Yes, and it has a quaternary structure due to the fact that it is different polypeptides that forms. Aha, lots of revision. Can you see how far we go back to proteins? And now the question is, refer to both these figures. You have to use the words that we see there and use them in your answer. So actually the answer has been given to you. Just apply that. We have a smaller surface area for hemoglobin due to the fact that the hemoglobin is now crescent shape and not bicconcave anymore. Less oxygen transported because of the smaller surface area. Blocking of the capillaries due to the shape and the stickiness. It slows down or reduces or stops oxygen transport. Please use both figures and refer to the terms used in the figures. The medical condition, sickle cell anemia, is widely distributed in Africa, parts of Asia and the Americas. People with sickle cell anemia have red blood cells with an abnormal form of hemoglobin. The genes for hemoglobin exist in two forms, the normal and the sickle cell with the S. When both these two are in capital letters, we know that they can be codominant. So both can exert their properties or features. Do you agree on that one? Good. So complete the genetic diagram below to show how two people who are heterozygous for this gene may have a child who has sickle cell anemia. Use the symbols HN and HS in your answer. We start with normal, but they refer to us that it is heterozygous. Write the genotype, and the genotype looks like this. Now I have to show the gametes. The gametes will look like this. Now, good. So H, S, H, N. H, S, H, N. Fertilization, if this sperm fertilize this egg cell, or this sperm fertilize that egg cell, or we can have this sperm fertilize that egg cell or that one. It will give us now the following genotypes. H, S, H, S. It will give us H, S, H, N. It will give us H, N, H, S, and lastly H, N, H, N. And now we can write down the phenotypes, but here we have the sickle cell anemia, which was the question. The question was, show that a parent, two normal parents, but they are heterozygous, can have an offspring with sickle cell anemia. We will get back to this one. So let's quickly look at the ratio, then you will understand a later question. Our ratio for normal to sickle cell will be 1 normal, 1 sickle cell. You agree? But normal to sickle cell to, let's say rather normal to carrier, normal to a carrier to a sickle cell. Because we are working with 3 different types here, it will give us 1 normal, 2 carriers, 1 sickle cell. So if we will look at our survival rate in a malaria area, now, who has the best chance to survive? This one has the best chance to survive. So 2 out of 4, or a ratio of 50% has a chance to survive. Now, that is an important thing to show how the heterozygous form helps with survival. Survival means having the opportunity to reproduce, and that make the population to grow. The normal ones in this case, unfortunately, have a chance to suffer from malaria, and therefore they have a higher risk to die due to malaria. But those with the sickle cell, in this case, those with the sickle cell, unfortunately, due to their inability to have enough oxygen, they die due to the sickle cell anemia. You agree? So, that is how this situation improves a population's survival fitness. You know, how they can fit in their environment, how fit they are. The fittest will survive. How do they fit into their environment? The effects of sickle cell anemia, there is a website where you can check. Red cells become sickle-shaped or distorted. Please do not use the word abnormal. Refer to the facts. They used the word abnormal earlier in the question because they want you to see what is the abnormality. Okay. In areas of low oxygen concentrations in the tissue, there will be fewer, less elastic, less flexible, short-lived red blood cells. This causes a decrease so that there's less hemoglobin. So there's a less efficient transporting of oxygen. We cannot say there are no oxygen, but there can be less respiration. Please don't say there's no respiration. No. Less energy due to respiration, less energy, and energy is release. Energy released. Important. So, fatigue, less active, breathless. The capillaries are blocked. That cause a lot of pain. Death of tissue linked to the blood supply. And then slow or poor growth, susceptible to infections because there's no energy to fight reactions, and that may lead to a reduced lifespan. That is a lot more than 4 marks, but that is all the possibilities. Now, then we have a map, and on this map we see sickle cell allows really overlap or is the same area as where we find the malaria. You see? And they want us to use the correct words to explain that. I know that here inside you know exactly what to say, but remember grade 12. Higher level means you have the ability to use the correct terms, definitions. Now, that is why you need to repeat so many times. So you can start with the idea that areas with high percentage of sickle cell allele are places with malaria. State that. State what you see on the map. Do not think that you just have to skip that fact. That is a fact. Now we start with, if you have the homozygous recessive, you have a reduced lifespan, so they will die. If you are homozygous with the dominant features, you are susceptible to malaria. So you will get easily malaria. If you are then heterozygous carrier, it means you have the allele, but you are not affected to malaria. Please do not refer here to immunity. That will be the wrong words. So the carrier will survive and a 50% chance to have the advantage to be resistant to malaria. And that is what eventually brings the success to this allele so that people can carry it on. It's a natural selection process because they are now fit enough to outcompete other that has malaria or that has the allele, the homozygous dominant allele, and therefore they will survive. No, the fittest will survive. Sickle cell anemia is an example of variation, and it's discontinuous form. Why? Discontinuous, we said, has distinct groups. So you either have sickle cell anemia or you do not have it. Now, you show the signs of the disease or you do not. So we are here referring to the phenotype. As a genotype change, it will also change the phenotype. So we have people with sickle cell anemia or we do not. There will be no in-betweens, no intermediates. If we draw this on a graph, what will the graph tells us? With a ruler we will draw an X and a Y axis. You agree? And here we will have the alleles, and here we will have the number of people, and we will make, with a ruler, we will make columns with the same width. Yes. And the same spaces there in between. The same spaces in between. Important, nah? And here we will have exactly the same distances, 10, 20, 30. And that is a bar graph for discontinuous variation. Excellent. Grade 12. There you have accomplished, and now you know, a very difficult answer.
Namibia is known for its beautiful wide open landscapes. However, these deserted spaces also pose numerous educational challenges in our country's rural areas. Because of this, many learners are denied access to proper teaching and learning. At Eduvision, we believe that education is the starting point to a journey of endless possibilities.
Very soon, we are going to see e-learning. Soon and very soon, we are going.
The plan for Eduvision was to identify areas in Namibia that did not have the proper learning resources, a working school or an education center.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, we are going to see e-learning. No more diet.
My name is Philip Smith. I'm the principal of Educate Academy in Otjiwarongo. The project Eduvision, the e-learning program, started in 2017. With a project like this, obviously telecommunication, internet connection is a major thing that needs to be sorted out, a logistical challenge. And the fact that we chose Chunkwe Secondary School as the first school didn't make it easier for ourselves. It's very far from Otjiwarongo, it's far from Windhoek. So the internet connection was a big challenge first of all. So with the help of the telecommunications expert Paratus, they made this dream come true with internet connections via Windhoek, Otjiwarongo to Chunkwe and then back, the whole process. Like I said, it's interactive whiteboard, so the internet speed, capacity of the connectivity and so forth plays a major role. And so Paratus made this dream come true, and they were on board from the first moment. So very grateful for Paratus.
The project offers teaching assistance of a high standard in science to rural secondary schools within the learner's own community by means of e-learning. This entails the following: live transmissions of lessons from an equipped teacher in a different location to the students in rural areas, students using their own cell phone, tablet or computer to recall each lesson, and interactive lessons, as well as the use of a smartboard as a teaching aid.
So if you look ahead at the next 3 years, we get information from the Ministry of Education. The future is very bright. So I think there's a lot of schools who can benefit from this program. Like I mentioned before, finances obviously plays a major role in a project like this. So we're very thankful for all the sponsors that are on board and still on board after almost 3 years of the project. So as long as people from the private sector can get involved, I think we can reach many schools in Namibia, because this project made a good start now. We're already seeing some positive results, and we can just call on all the private sector corporate sponsors to come on board and join in this very, very positive project.
It is Eduvision's goal to prepare and guide learners in order to make the modern world they are living in accessible to all.
My name is Magdalena Neoma. I'm 18 years old and I'm doing my first year at UNAM Commando campus, and I completed my grade 12 at Tsonkwe Senior Secondary School. I'm doing education, so I'm gonna teach at Tsonkwe Secondary School, because there I really need to go there and motivate the learners. Eduvision helped me a lot. It assisted us in teaching for mathematics, physical science, and biology. And it also, we get to exchange learning from other schools like Educate, whereby they teach us, and that's the most thing that we benefited from. Studying without Eduvision was so challenging. And when Eduvision was introduced at our school, things become more easier. The time where Eduvision was not introduced, we were so slow in learning. And when Eduvision introduced at our school, my learning speed increases. Things were kind of boring. And when Eduvision came, my mind changed the way I think. I'm really grateful for what Eduvision gave us. Our class of 2019 was the first group to make it, to perform very well at Tsonkwe Senior Secondary School. So it should keep up the spirit. We need that. It should continue to support us.
Eduvision aspires to ensure that equal opportunity is offered to every learner in rural areas to tap into his or her own potential while working in an environment which views disadvantages not as obstacles but as unique attributes that can be regarded as powerful assets when given the proper opportunity. At Eduvision, we believe that dreams are the foundation of knowledge and hope always triumphs over experience.
No more problems. Everything is proper. If it's overnight, then it's dynamite.